All right, everybody, we are back for our final session of the day. So I am delighted to introduce Ana-Andreea Stoica, Co-Organiser at MS4SG, who will present Tech for Social Good from Research to Practice. Ana-Andreea is a PhD student in computer science at Columbia University, working with Professor Augustin Chétreau on social networks and algorithmic fairness. Since fall 2019, she has been co-organizing the mechanism designed for social good initiative with Rediet Abebe and Irene Lowe. Welcome, Ana-Andreea, and the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to all of you in the Q&A and to see what questions you might have. I'm really happy to present some of our work in MD4SG. I'll mostly be talking about where AI can be used for social good, what kind of fields it interacts with, and what our organization is doing to promote this kind of interdisciplinary research, to learn from other fields, and to promote AI for social good. So I'm going to start sharing my slides now. All right. And there's been a lot of talk at this conference, as well as in many other events and research, about how there are tools in tech that can be harmful. And those go from tools that may amplify discrimination and patterns of historical prejudice, as we see in the use of criminal risk assessment with a very famous case of the machine bias, where African Americans tend to be treated in a more discriminatory way by machine learning algorithms that try to assess the risks that they pose compared to other white people in the group. And in many other subfields as well, we see the effect of tech in promoting the proliferation of fake news, which has started to become a problem in many different countries, from Brazil, in Nigeria, and in India as well. And also in creating tools that aid in systemic discrimination, one of the most prominent one being in facial recognition. This is a tool that has been increasingly being banned in different areas of the world, starting with San Francisco a while ago. And finally, there's, of course, other tools that are seemingly neutral in advertisement, in job matching, in school matching, that may amplify a discrimination that exists in society. So there's a big question here of how can we analyze and use algorithms and AI in general to create techniques that are meant for social good. And here I want to talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing with the organization that Jeremy mentioned, with Mechanism Design for Social Good. This is an organization that was founded by my colleague Rediet Abebe and Kira Goldner in 2016. And since then, it's been growing into a group of researchers and practitioners that now span over 100 institutions and 20 different countries from different continents. So we have members from the US, from Latin America, from Africa and Europe mostly. And now it's co-organized with Rediet and with other colleagues of ours, with Irene, Wani, and Francisco. And there are many different parts in which we're trying to promote interdisciplinary research and work through this organization. And the main purpose of it is to center the impacted communities, the underserved groups, and to understand what problems are at the forefront of using AI and different tools from economics and from other fields to solve this kind of issues. We work with policymakers and with government organizations as well, and with researchers from different fields. And a main, property of this organization is that it's been student-led since its inception. So there are many different parts to it. We have a colloquium series where we get different experts in different domains to talk about their research and to interact and to tell us about the work that they've been doing. So we had Al Roth from Stanford, Pauline Kim, who talked about legal issues in AI and bias, and Karen Smilowitz, who talked a lot about education. And this is really inspiring for us to think about the different projects we can do and to bring us together in pursuing them. we have different events at different conferences and workshops that we're organizing to try to get more interdisciplinary research going. And the main pillar of this organization, I would say, are our working groups that are groups that meet online. Even before the pandemic, we used to meet online every 2 weeks. And there are groups on different topics that bring together researchers, students, faculty, and practitioners to work on these different projects. So I want to spend a little bit of time in this presentation talking about the different areas in which AI can be used for social good and the kind of projects that can come out of this work. So these are this is an example of the working groups that we have. And to highlight a few of the works here, so for example, the Environment and Climate Group is a group that is working on computational methods to address environmental challenges, particularly those that relate to the climate crisis, and they combine methods from mechanism design and economics with learning algorithms to try to use that in a way that can be helpful for the environment. So a recent paper from some of our working group members is working on how can AI aid in farming, and they're working with how smallholder farmers in different areas of the world, particularly in Africa, can use AI tools to be more effective in their practices. So for detecting diseases, detecting different issues, using satellite imagery and big data to understand some of these issues. They also work on projects on how AI can prevent harmful practices, and they use also large-scale data sets to predict and identify poachers in different parts of the world in which they're present in a natural environment. And they use that in a field experiment to be able to identify them and to quickly take measures. And that's an example where AI can be really used out in the field as an effective measure for preventing this kind of harms. In other groups that we have in our organization, there's a couple of them that work with issues related to inequality and discrimination in AI, and not only. So the Bias, Discrimination, and Fairness group is one of them that works on related issues to inequality as well. And one of the projects that came out of this is to understand what is exactly an equitable decision. There's so many different definitions on how do we think of fairness, and some of them come from a long history of economic research on different ways to define inequality and discrimination based on different statistical measures and different assumptions that your model can have. And some of them are more recent that come from machine learning. So there's this new field on talking about fairness in machine learning that looks at what is the outcome, how does the outcome of an algorithm look like in comparison to what you're inputting in, and looking at the different groups and individuals and looking at what is the probability for each group or for each individual to receive a certain outcome. And these two fields, looking at inequality from an economic point of view and from a machine learning point of view, start to converge, because more and more we use machine learning algorithms to allocate resources that originally were used in a mechanism design setting, where you have a central agent that creates this kind of allocations. So, for example, in advertisement, in auctions, that is one field in which it's traditionally been used or developed from a mechanism design point of view. But increasingly, we're using machine learning to identify features, to use this big data features that we can process through different algorithms to do targeted advertisement in a more efficient way. So these two fields come together in producing similar applications, but yet they have very different definitions, different ways of operating. Recently published was to do, how do we bridge these two fields together? What are the lessons that we learned, and how to make this kind of decision making systems more equitable? And on the one hand, in economics and mechanism design, the main goal that people are looking at is to make sure that people have a certain level of utility, that the welfare of a system is relatively good. And that can come into tension with other notions of what is fair, with, for example, having representative outcomes between different groups. If I'm applying an algorithm for different groups of people, different demographics, and they compose the society in a certain way, do I get the same demographics getting the output that I am hoping for? So in the example of a classification, many of these definitions look at this like statistical parity, and that is not necessarily the same as making sure that everyone's utility is relatively equal. There are many other the fields of research that look at this intersection. So looking at considering that people are strategic and that they have certain incentives, they're going to react to whatever decision that you're making. So whenever your decision becomes public, people are going to react according to their incentives. And that's something that has been increasingly being used in machine learning as well. By looking at issues like strategic classification. If you have a classifier to which people respond, how do you design it in a way that's still optimal, that it's not being gamed by people? And looking at what is the long-term effect. So what are the feedback loops that are being created through this kind of systems, and making sure that the that you're trying to achieve doesn't stop at one step, that you're making term things are going to be done in an equitable way. And machine learning also really complements these definitions by looking at demographic groups and considering what is the impact on these groups. So it can be really helpful as a tool that creates this group level diagnosis and really analyzes inequalities between different groups at the outcome level. It's also been coming with there are like at least 20 different definitions of fairness in machine learning, which provide these avenues of thinking of that we don't really have a single definition, and we probably should not have a single definition. There's just so many different contexts in which that needs specialized attention. So whether we're doing school matching, in which AI is being, or school admissions, in which AI is being increasingly used, or in providing with targeted advertisement, or in many other different cases, like providing with job opportunities, with hiring procedures, the way we process hiring applications like CVs and so on. These all are fields in which AI is being increasingly used together with mechanism design. And for all these reasons, this project comes at a time to really understand what are the gaps that we can identify between them, and what's a framework that can work for both of them to have an equitable outcome. From our other group, from Global Perspectives of Inequality, a very related work to add that came out in the form of a tutorial at one of the main CS conference in economics and computation this year, came to present and to explain, to basically answer the question of what is the impact of provision and targeting on vulnerable populations. Because in the end of the day, both of these mechanisms from economics and from machine learning are increasingly being used to allocate resources. And oftentimes we don't really center the groups that are vulnerable who need this kind of resources. We look at a general allocation and we see what kind of trade-offs and differences there are. But even when we are trying to target people who are vulnerable, we don't have systems that are like highly efficient for that. First of all, it is very difficult if you want to transfer goods, services, or cash to those who are in need. How do you identify them correctly? How do you make sure that you create the right incentives for them to be a sustainable system or a sustainable transfer system? And these questions can only be answered by these two fields together. So I've been very fortunate to work with my colleagues on these issues, and to see really that there are so many gaps in the way we basically define and implement different mechanisms to answer these questions in different fields. To finish up with one of our another group that's been working on very relevant projects related to this is the data economics groups. It's to what are the dynamics around data collection and data usage. This is an article from one of our members, Abeba Birhan, about the algorithmic how data is being used as a new currency in many parts of the world, but that tends to affect mostly vulnerable populations, and especially is being used by different companies, startups, and governments from different parts of, we're using data from different parts of Africa. Sometimes this is being done without the knowledge of people or without knowing what the impact is of having this data being used. So this group has been working on making this process a little bit more, bringing up some of these issues and making the process of data collection more transparent by creating a data platform. And this is an ongoing project that the working group members have been developing to collect and understand what are the different data sets, to basically create a database for many different data sets, and to really understand their properties, where do they come from, how we can use them for research. So using this for research purposes, together with data visualizations and recommendation features, has the aim of enabling African scholars and practitioners to share data for research purposes. And this project is mostly spearheaded by our colleagues who come from different African countries and who have centered this issue at the core of the project. If you're interested in this kind of work, this is an email of one of our members you can contact. And we are most of the time, of course, we are very happy to talk to you or to answer any questions you might have. This is a group that has been greatly increasing in size and in different kinds of fields, and collaborate, involved, and to learn from different organizations or from people in different fields. So please contact us if you have any questions, and if you're interested in learning more or getting involved with one of our working groups, the organization at large, this is where you find our contact. And thank you very much. That's all I had for today.
So thanks, Anna. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions for her, please follow her into the Networking Lounge speaker. So Anna, there's a link in your chat, and people are going to follow you, and they're going to be able to ask you questions on live. So that wraps it up for today. So it's been a hugely informative day, and really hope to look and to see you forward another time at the Inspired AI session at 12:30 CET on October 29. And this is where we will have our second AI in Action Day. But for now, everybody, please head over to Sessions area, where you're going to find all our Networking Lounge. It's going to be open, and you can use the chat on the right, on your right-hand side of the screen, or click the Participate button, and you will be able to share your audio and camera to go live. So we can have up to 9 people on the screen at a time. So again, that's going to be super interactive. And if you would like to start a topic, you will also be able to create your own subgroups. So simply click on the plus add session button in the top right corner and complete the details, and your session will appear. You can invite people to join by posting on the Networking Lounge or in the event chat. So feel free to create groups based on topic, industry, whatever you like. And finally, be sure to add yourself on our Tech Talk WhatsApp group to continue networking. And you can scan your QR code or enter the lounge to click your link. So thanks again for taking part. It's been a wonderful experience to be your chair, and looking forward for you to connect with me in the future. Goodbye, everybody.